Those are great pictures.
Yeah, there's we have the sound. I guess the music's not on today, Minister, but here's we have the League of Champions. The We Are the Champions in the background. This is where me and Craig sing. Here we go, Craig. We are the champions, my friend. So we're welcoming all the guests now. They're just logging in as we're moving through and going through our slides. We'll have to get you a jersey, Minister.
Well, it'd be an honor to wear it. Great looking shirt, actually.
Yeah. School events. Yeah, we're doing the schools.
So important. We need to spend.
Yeah.
We need so many more people, and we need to engage more, especially in the construction industry. Just we're going to have huge problems here if we don't do more and incentivize people to look at the trade, to provide
Yes, lots of efforts being made by the minister and also the Minister of Labour, Monty. It's doing great efforts with the skills trades. So I'd like to welcome everybody. Are we all good to go? I believe we've got our guests that are all arriving. Welcome everybody. This is the 14th of a series of our League of Champions webinar series. Hello again, my name is Dan Fleming. I'm with NORCAT, a not-for-profit organization that helps support the League of Champions, also on the steering committee. It's a pleasure to have everybody here with us again today, and everybody's staying warm, and I got their exercise from shoveling the snow today. So today we'd like to, I've got a pleasure of welcoming Minister Tabello, correct, Minister?
Tabolo, that's good.
Very close, yeah. Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, he's with us here. Welcome, Minister. We also have Liz Horvath. Welcome, Liz. Manager of Workplace Mental Health at the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Welcome, Liz. Yeah. And we have our usual group is David Frame. David with the Ontario General Contractors Association, and also Craig Lesurf. Welcome, Craig. David.
Thanks, Dan.
Oh, good. Yeah, so it's great to have everybody here. As we say, today we're going to be ways to support employees' mental health during COVID. So we have the honor to have the minister and also Liz to give us some tools for employers and for employees as we're going through these challenging times with mental health and this COVID, as we are in these dates. We do have some Q&As if you'd like to you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We have some Q&As. If you'd like to ask some questions to the minister and also to Liz throughout the presentations, we'll do our best to answer them. We've got a few questions we'll go through with them, but please feel free to share some of your questions and your insight on the Q&As as we go through. Webinar is being recorded, and we'd like to remind the viewers about the Q&As, as I mentioned. And so I'd like to just pass it over now to Craig. Craig Lesurf, the chair for the League of Champions, and also Gillam Group Presidents. Craig, welcome.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to be here. We thought a little talk about the League of Champions. You see us wearing our jerseys. These are representation form. There you go. Dan's wearing it proud. And what the League of Champions jersey is a symbol, and on it we ask everybody to sign their name. And as part of signing your name, it's usually done on a legal contract. And by signing your family name, you're going to commit to do three things. One, you're going to make sure you work safely every day. Two, the person beside you works safely every day. And three, you both go home safe at the end of the day. And that's what it's about. And so for us, it's about the bigger picture. It's about fit for duty. It's about coming up and showing up to be mentally acute and aware, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about mental health today. And you'll see on these jerseys here, you'll see I've got quite a number of signatures, north of 10,000, and I've got a lot of commitments from a lot of people. And I'm going to hold them to the promise. It's something we're dear in our heart. So if you want to get more involved with the League of Champions, check out our website. And as Dan said, this is being recorded. And on the website is this one and all the previous ones. So by all means, please check us out. And over to you, David.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah, let me introduce David Frame. David Frame, he's the director for government relations with the Ontario General Contractors Association. So on you go, David.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Craig. I just want to update you on a few things that are coming up. Now, the League of Champions does not at this time have another webinar set. We're anticipating we will have a webinar in April on Fit for Duty. We're doing a lot of work on Fit for Duty, and this certainly supports Fit for Duty, what we're doing here today. Stand by in the next couple of weeks. You'll be hearing about an April webinar on Fit for Duty. But in the meantime, there's lots of other content out there. OGCA is having a webinar next week on building respectful and inclusive workplaces. And this is a follow-up to the webinar OGCA had on the bullying issue and brought on Ellis Dawn to talk about their efforts on it. This webinar is to bring you the tools to allow you to address these issues, to make sure you have policies, procedures, communications in place. And it's going to be an excellent presentation coming from our friends at Sherrard Coos. So you can go on the OGCA website and you can sign up free of charge for that. Also coming up is the OGCA Leadership Conference. Usually do it over one day at the beginning of March. This year, because of COVID, we're doing it online over 3 days. So that will be March 5th, 12th, and 19th. And there's lots of good content on there for health and safety professionals and for leaderships in the industry. So please check that out and sign up for the Leadership Conference. And finally, you'll be hearing from us more over the next few weeks about Safety Week. Safety Week is coming up March 3rd to 10th. The theme is be focused, be safe, be aware. And we're going to be talking a lot about mental health, fit for duty, other challenges during that week. So stand by for that. And now it's my privilege to introduce Minister Tubola. So before taking office, Michael was a certified addiction counselor and an advocate for Caritas, a therapeutic community providing help to those facing mental health and addiction challenges. This government demonstrated that mental health is now a high priority when it appointed Michael Tubola as its first Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. In March 2020, Minister Tubola presented the government's blueprint for building a comprehensive and connected mental health and addiction system. This was before COVID-19 created a health crisis leading to a mental health crisis. Minister Tubola, please join us to address the increasing challenge of mental health and addictions. Minister.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone, first of all, for having me with you, which I love the concept of League of Champions, and I love the concept of all the signatures representing a social contract between each other as an indication or as a responsibility to ourselves, to stay safe, the people that we're working with, to keep them safe, and of course, to go home and be safe at home as well. And when you look at what mental health is all about, it really is about those very things. Staying healthy for oneself, staying healthy in the environment that we work in, and of course, going home and being safe with the family. When we started the Roadmap to Wellness, I came with a very different background than many individuals that come to politics. I was not interested in coming to politics to become a politician. So you can see with the lack of hair and the color of my beard, I'm a little older than most people that come to politics, but I came to politics because I recognized that long before we had the COVID-19 pandemic, there was another wave or tsunami, or we can call it a pandemic as well, in the area of mental health. Now, a lot of you will hear about addiction overdoses, opioids, and the crisis that that's causing. You'll hear about people who seek supports and services pre-pandemic and were basically escorted out of the hospitals and really not given many opportunities to find the help that they needed. That was what was the reality in the province of Ontario. And that is as a result of really lack of investments in the mental health sector for over 15 years. Now, it was mentioned that I'm a certified addictions counselor. I'm also a practicing lawyer. I practiced 33 years before coming to politics. And in that, I spent 10 years running a center that looked after the needs of men that were suffering from addictions and concurrent disorders. That gave me a laser focus on wanting to see a system built that worked. And, when I got to politics, one of the first things I got to read was a standing committee report from 2010 that carried forward the concepts, or the lack of concepts, a lack of a framework to provide supports for people with mental health and addictions. And those principles, which include access to services, the fact that there is no connected system and it's fragmented, so that there are gaps that people fall through, all of the situations that we have with young people and people that mature out of youth into adulthood when they have a neurodevelopmental disorder, and the lack of supports for them and their families. When you look at all of the gaps and the issues that we had in the system, the frustration that I felt was the fact that the little organization that I chaired had started over 40 years ago and was doing work and making a difference. It was doing work and keeping recidivism rates very low, which meant it was having an impact on people. But like many of the other organizations, and I bet you if I ask this question or if you think about it, all the organizations that you pretty well know that are doing the hard work in your communities are organizations that were organically grown from the grassroots. And many of you, I'm sure, support those organizations through fundraising activities to ensure that they're able to do their work. Now, I don't know about you, but before coming to government, I thought that was totally wrong. And in government, I found it extremely wrong because, again, if we want to look after the people of the province of Ontario and we believe in a society where everyone is entitled to have the help and supports they need when they need them, then we needed to do more. We needed to do something, never mind more. So we started with the framework for me, which is the Roadmap to Wellness, the foundational document that looks at the lifespan of an individual, so that when you're under the age of 12, there's things we can do from education and prevention that will ensure that the person, as he matures, will have dealt with or have the supports needed for mental health and hopefully prevent addictions. Now, we know that we can reduce addiction rates by 25% if we invest in our youth and children. We also know that 70% of the mental health issues that all of us, including me, face every day could be resolved if we were able to deal with them when they first started. And, they start in youth and adolescence. So childhood and adolescence is a time we should be investing and doing more to help develop the children and build the resiliency and coping skills they need. But of course, as we move forward, 12 to 24, and then 24 to 30, to 45, and 45 to 65, and then 65 and over. Every one of those phases within the lifespan needs to have supports to ensure that individuals are able to get the help they need when they need it. In addition to that, the province of Ontario's France and Germany combined. How do you deliver those services when you fly to Thunder Bay and then get in a car and drive for 4 hours only to see a sign that says the next town is 850 kilometers away? How do you provide services to these remote communities? They're Ontarians. They deserve and expect the same level of services that we have everywhere else in the province. So how do we deal with the far north and with our rural communities? And that's something that we took very serious as well. In addition to that, we also need to ensure that when we're providing services, we're providing services that are culturally appropriate to the people in need of those supports. There's no point a guy like me trying to help an Indigenous individual or a Black individual or a Francophone or someone with neurodevelopmental disorders. But what we can do is ensure that we have people trained to provide services that are culturally sensitive and appropriate for those individuals. Not every society is individualistic, where me and I are the most important part of it. Many of our members of our province are from other parts of the world, and they have a community or collectivist point of view, which means we need to take into account the fact that a lot of the stigma associated with something being wrong with me is going to be internalized and not spoken about. So whether we're talking about the Portuguese, the Italian, the African, the Asian communities, the South Asian communities, these are all collectivist societies. Many of them form part of the membership of your organization and many of the construction businesses throughout the province. So we have to be sensitive to their needs, to the fact that they probably grew up like me, being told that you're a guy, suck it up, and you don't need any help. But all of you know how important it is that if you do have a broken bone or a cut to get to a doctor or to a hospital and look after that injury. Because if you don't, it could become something much worse. And so you go to the hospital or you go seek treatment and help. Unfortunately, many of us will not do that when it comes to mental health. And that's because of the associated stigma that comes with mental health and having, having some kind of a mental health illness. And again, I implore all of you that if you have an issue that you feel anxious or you feel depressed or that you're somehow feeling socially isolated, especially during a pandemic like COVID-19, do something about it. We have all kinds of resources that are available free of charge. They're available at ontario.ca/mental health. There is internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy, which has proven to be extremely successful. More than 40,000 people are now on the system and using it. And we're getting statistics back that show 70% success rate. And in addition to that, 15% are feeling better as a result of having completed the program. Talk to each other. You mentioned, you've got to look after yourself. The self is extremely important. So for that, I always say mindfulness. You got to live in the moment. You're all creators. You all have a vocation. You can do things with your hands that I only dream of being able to do. Look at that as something positive, what you create, and take pride in that. Taking pride in that is extremely important. And of course, I look at the pictures behind some of you. I got a chance to see close-ups, the smiles. It is so important that we talk to each other, that we're not afraid to say, hey, I'm not having a good day. I use this all the time. It's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to ask someone or to talk to someone and tell them that you need some help. And of course, being whether you're a man or a woman, the women in this pandemic, for me, are all like, I raise them to a whole other level, because not only are they having to deal with their jobs or work, they're the moms, they're the spouses, they're the partners, they become the educators, they become the chief security officer for the home. I don't know what else we could throw on the women to give them more anxiety and more depression than we already have. So I have to say, if you haven't said how much you appreciate your partner's role in this pandemic, please let them know how much you care. And the guys, going out to work, thankfully, the construction sector was deemed an essential service. So many of the people are not sitting at home kind of, in isolation and having that experience to deal with. But having to go out to work and putting yourself at risk, not knowing what you're bringing home, I don't even know how to describe to you that level that you've got to have as well in terms of anxiety for the risk that you're bringing into your home, to your loved ones. So this isn't easy. It isn't easy in any aspect of what we're doing. There's a statistic that I like to bring forward, especially when I'm talking to business people. We lose 500,000 days a week in Canada to people from a mental health or addiction issue, unable to function because of something happening in their lives. I think that, like I said, the fact that, meditation, mindfulness, looking inside yourself, looking for the positives in the day that you have, no matter how bad the day is, that is something that will really help you go forward. Sharing your experiences with your colleagues, with your family, asking your kids how their day was, and monitoring things like how they're eating, if they're sleeping, are they isolating themselves, how are they reacting, going for a walk with them, but opening up and having dialogue. That's probably the best way of breathing in fresh air into a very stale and difficult year that we've had to live through. As well with your partners, be appreciative to them and to the things that they're doing to keep your family together. We're going to get through this. I am convinced of it, and we're starting to see just how much we can get through. Our government is committed to helping every sector and everyone in our communities with its investment. We're somewhere around $750 million in investments to date. and we will keep to our plan of the $3.8 billion investment. With that, I could talk forever to all of you. I had prepared notes, but I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I needed to speak to you, and I'm gonna stop here, and I'm gonna say if there's any questions, I'd love to do a bit of a interchange with whoever's on the line, and I'll stay with you as long as someone doesn't press the delete or escape button on me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Yeah, some great points you make there about the stigma of mental health, and about people reaching out and moving forward to support themselves and also their spouses and their family. You mentioned some things around opioids and the overdose and addictions, about the headlines across Canada over here during the COVID pandemic. The issue affects individuals and families in all walks of life. Those people could be our own families, our neighbors, our colleagues. Why do you think the issue has gotten so much worse as a result of the pandemic? And some thoughts maybe on what the government's doing to address this issue.
Now, that's a great question, and I believe the mental health pandemic predated COVID-19, and we were moving toward the numbers that we were seeing, because we were starting to see the increase in use, and the situation what was happening in British Columbia. We are in very difficult and challenging times. There hasn't been any substantial investment other than the last 2 years in mental health and addictions in the province of Ontario. So when you look at how quickly you could get help, you're looking at delays to get into a withdrawal management program of weeks, if not months. If you manage to get into a withdrawal management program, before you can get treatment, you're looking at 6 months to a year. And it's inevitable because of the way the brain functions. When the prefrontal cortex, the executive functions of the brain, what makes you decide what to do and how to do things, and tells you the difference between right and wrong. When you start using, unless you at that moment capture the individual in some kind of a program, the individual's brain detaches, and you have the limbic portion of the brain, which is the survival portion of the brain, taking over. And then it's all about the drugs. And you'll only capture that individual if and when that individual either overdoses, and you're lucky enough to be there when that happens, and he or she is lucky enough as well, or when that person is on the way to being incarcerated. So it reduces the chances of you being able to help someone unless you capture them at that time. So the philosophy of our government is and will be to invest in building a connected system centered around the needs of the individual. And we're well on our way to doing that. We started with consumption and treatment sites with an investment of $31 million. Withdrawal management, we're utilizing now mobile intervention crisis teams, diverting calls from 911 to give people more appropriate supports and services, rather than having them, go the judicial route and end up in a cell somewhere in a jail. So we're trying to do that. And of course, we're looking at different options and modalities of treatment that are culturally sensitive. So if you're Indigenous, we look at land-based healing to help, because again, we know that that's what's best in those circumstances. But there's a lot more for us to do. Education is the key as well, which is something that hopefully we can work together as well, because again, unfortunately, many people in the construction industry, as a result of the stress of the work that they do, have gone to doctors who were, of the view that opioids were not addictive, and have created a crisis, or contributed to the crisis of opioid overdoses in the province, in the country. So we're working towards correcting that with education, and hopefully doing more with organizations like yours to ensure that we educate and show that there are alternatives to opioids to managing pain.
Thank you, Minister. Yeah, well said. You spoke a bit about the roadmap to wellness and the Ontario's mental health and addiction systems. What do you look like? System? What's it look like, and what are we seeing in this roadmap to wellness? What is this?
So the roadmap to wellness is really a foundational document. You're all in the construction business, so if you don't start with a solid foundation and try to build, eventually the wind or something is going to blow it over. So we wanted to make really sure that we had a document that was based on not only what we thought we needed to do, but was well informed. So between Minister Elliott and myself, we spent, I don't know how many weeks. There isn't a corner of this province that I haven't been to. I've been as far as Sandy Lake, Pekanjicum, Thunder Bay, Red Rock. I mean, I could name so many communities around the province that I've visited, and I've listened to the people, as has Minister Elliott, to try to identify issues like access and why access is an issue, because many people, unless you give them the opportunity to seek the help, they can't get it. So the framework really looks to address the issues. So establishing core components that are available in each of the communities that people live in, looking how we can regionalize those assets where we can't replicate everything we have in a city like Toronto, for instance, and then trying to connect the pieces together so that the person never feels alone in the system. That's really the basis of the roadmap to wellness, and ensuring that the individual can get the help they need. My background is Italian. I worked as a kid in the summers in construction, and I can say there were many people that I worked with that had an alcohol issue, and none of them would have gone to seek help. But we got to get away from that, because at the end of the day, over the course of time, utilizing substances as a way to cope is not going to be useful for anyone. And of course, we see it in divorces, we see it in domestic violence, we see it in, industrial accidents, road accidents. So the roadmap to wellness, what we've tried to do is lay that foundation. And now what we're doing is the first $174 million invested went to basically fill as many gaps as we could. The second $176 million that was invested fiscal 2021 went to continue to look at the various sectors. So we looked at seniors, we looked at universities and colleges, we looked at children and youth, we looked at addictions, and we tried again to provide funding to all the different lifespan components or parts of the person's life to ensure that the system started to take shape. And again, the government will be investing additional money this year. And this is annualized funding. So this isn't one time, and we're building the system, we're putting the money in, we're making long-term commitment, but we're also doing something that's never been done before. We're measuring outcomes. Because again, as responsible as government, we must be responsible for taxpayers' dollars. And what we want to do is we want to ensure that a person who's getting that support will in fact benefit from it. So in corrections, for instance, which is something, I was the Minister for Community Safety and Corrections. I've been to, out of 25 corrections facilities in the province, I visited 19. Out of the 19 I visited, I never came out of one without asking myself the question, what exactly do we correct in corrections? Because we correct little to nothing, which means the individual's doomed to fail once he gets out or she gets out and repeat back into the system. How's that helping? You talk to someone that goes to a hospital and they're in the emergency room, and then 3 days later, because they were given a prescription and a bag with a note to go see your family doctor, 3 days later, they're in the emergency room again. How is that going to end hallway healthcare unless we start looking at the underlying issues to individuals and providing them the care they need on a continuum, so that those individuals actually have an opportunity to change their way of life?
Thank you. Yeah, about the rehabilitation, I agree. Just another question about the roadmap and how would that impact the construction industry and the members of the construction industry and their wives. How do you see that supporting them?
I think it's really important, because one of the things you find, and it's not just the construction industry, but all industries, what you find is that no one gets training anywhere when it comes to their mental health. So you talk to firefighters, and they're taught basically how to put out fires and stay alive when they get close to a fire. You talk to a police officer, and they're taught basically, the criminal code, say how to give a person a ticket for doing something wrong, and then he's sent out. And the first time he goes to a car accident, or the first time a firefighter has to pry a body out of a burnt house, things start to happen to them. And in the construction industry, it's no different. How many organizations are building resiliency into their employees and giving them an opportunity to understand the triggers, to understand when a situation is becoming unmanageable, out of control, and what are we doing as businesses to promote individuals for getting that help? So the roadmap to wellness addresses that, because again, when we're delivering culturally sensitive services, people in the construction industry are an industry. They have a vocation and they do a job that has its own demands on them. So the question and the consultations we've done is, how can we help? And one of the things we found was to provide psychotherapy, not only virtually, but also in person. So we have a program called Structured Psychotherapy, which is based on the IPAT model that we copied from England. The system is truly a remarkable system, but we've made an investment of over $20 million, and it will allow anyone utilizing their OHIP card to get help from a doctor or from a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And the services are free of charge and, of course, completely confidential. So that's something that we're doing. The virtual supports that we put in place with the Morneau Chappelle and Mind Beacon programs for virtual CBT. We've got other programs that we put in place specifically for first responders and frontline workers. And again, in consultation with organizations like yours, I'm interested in doing even more, because again, if we drill down, it's not just about the lifespan. It's not just about ensuring that we have a step care model within each jurisdiction, but it's the sensitivity to the delivery of services. And what do we do to ensure that an individual has the opportunity to build a therapeutic alliance with another individual and be able to talk freely about his or her problems and find solutions that are going to be meaningful. So that's how the framework is built for us to continue to hone in and build a system that looks after the individual needs. A one-size-fits-all approach is something that I'm very much against. And we will move the system to ensure that we do look after the needs of various people around the province.
Great, thank you. Thanks. I see John's asked a couple of questions here, just online here. He's got one question regarding a 911. Other than 911, when supervisors, teachers, spouses refuse to listen to good advice, awareness to mitigate addictions to electronic devices. John's asking about the electronic devices and the addiction of electronic devices. Where would we go?
For process addictions, and again, process addictions is something that is coming more to the forefront now, especially as a result of the pandemic, with young kids that have focused their attention on gaming, and it's not just children; it's also the gambling, process addictions, Facebook addictions. Those are all addictions that are being looked after. There's a program that is run out of in Windsor, Hotel Dieu, that has a residential component to it, but there's also a virtual program that they run. And again, through Connects Ontario, the best advice I can give to anyone looking for those supports is Connects Ontario. And if you go online, again, the website for mental health, so ontario.ca/mental health, you'll see a link to Connects Ontario. There's a phone number. Contact them. One of their operators will ensure that the individual is connected to the services that are available in the province. And they're available to basically anyone, 12 years of age and up, because process addictions, like many other addictions, don't discriminate against age.
Thank you. Yeah, Connects Ontario. Thank you. One last question I've got here regarding as your priorities as Ontario's first Minister of Health and Mental Health and Addictions, and have the government's priorities shifted as a result of the COVID-19? So the impact of COVID-19.
It's an interesting question, and it hasn't shifted as much as forced us to focus in a lot more intensely on virtual supports. I would say that'd be the first key part of this. The second part of this, it's forced us to look at how we can manage mental health through virtual systems and how we can manage records in a much more efficient way than has been in the past. In the past, if you had an addiction issue and you went to a center, the records of that center would be with the center. And you went to another center, they'd have to start all over again with all the diagnostic and assessment tools. And so we're looking at moving towards the creation of a system that will integrate and follow the individual, so the individual can actually make some headway through the system as opposed to having starting all over again. And that's really a priority across the government. From the standpoint of mental health and new priorities, I mean, in all honesty, mental health is a huge priority. When we started looking at the whole healthcare system and saying, you know what, the LHINs aren't doing it for us. So we've got to move away from the LHINs, and we need to create Ontario health teams that are more focused on smaller areas, regions. We've got to look at providing them with a centralized way of ensuring that there's a criterion established for how we deal with mental health and addictions. And so we developed the Center of Excellence. So the Roadmap to Wellness was launched about almost a year ago today, actually. I never forget that day because I still live the nightmare every time I go out and do an announcement with Minister Elliott. It was our first announcement together. We got up at Ontario Shores. We announced mental health, the Roadmap to Wellness, and all the questions were, Minister, do you think this COVID-19 is going to become a pandemic? Well, a year later,
yeah, look where we are now.
And so every time we do something together, we're always talking about COVID-19. But the Roadmap to Wellness and the importance of that document is something that's never been second when it comes to talking about the health and well-being of people in the province. We always say, and again, all of us can attest to this, if you wake up and you're having a lousy day, you're depressed or you're anxious about something, you could be in the greatest shape of your life, you're still not going to have a good day. Mental health is the basis of our health. So we have to do more. And that's been what we started with and how we developed. And of course, I think the crowning jewel of the work we've done is the creation of the Center of Excellence. Because like Cancer Care Ontario, what we're doing is we're focusing policy, the development of policy, the implementation of policy, but most importantly, looking to see the impact of policy from the standpoint of how we move forward in a center of excellence like Cancer Care Ontario that has made Ontario one of the leading provinces when it comes to the care of people with cancer. This is what we've aspired to do and are doing with respect to mental health in the province. So if anything, the pandemic has kind of forced us to move forward perhaps faster in the technological and the virtual than we would have otherwise. But I'm laser focused, and my goal sitting at cabinet, and cabinet, there's numerous ministers around the table. 16 of those ministries have something to do with mental health.
Yes, yeah.
When it comes time to talk about supportive housing or education or corrections or the justice system with the Attorney General, I pipe up every single time, because unlike the past, where mental health could be swept under the rug or just kept as a non-priority, it is a priority. And I ensure at every cabinet meeting that if the issue relates to mental health, the children, the adults, the seniors, labor, wherever, I have something to say about it, so that the lens of mental health is on every decision this government makes.
It's awesome. Thank you, Minister. We all appreciate the work that you're doing towards mental health through the ministry. And I look forward to looking more into the Center of Excellence and also the Roadmap to Wellness, to learning more about it, because it's great work that you're doing and your ministry. So appreciate it. I'd like to just thank you for being here.
Well, my pleasure. And I'm really, I was pleased to see Liz on the line and the work she's doing as well. This is what it's all about, because that allows us to dialogue. It allows us to understand the needs. And that is the important lobbying that has to be done to government to ensure that we're looking after all the members. Because, you know, if it wasn't for the people in the construction industry, boy, would we have problems. You know, the whole province would be crumbling. So I appreciate all the great work that you all do. Please all stay safe, all stay healthy, and keep doing the fantastic job you're doing and making Ontario one of the greatest provinces in Canada, and one of the most blessed places to live in the entire world. So thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate all the work you're doing, and we look forward to meeting up again and chatting again. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Craig. Now we have Liz Horvath that's going to come on. So I'll Craig will introduce Liz and give us a little background. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. You know, Liz Horvath is here today. She's the manager of workplace and mental health. She leads the workplace mental health program at Mental Health Commission of Canada. She helps organize and implement workplace mental health strategies aligned with the national standard of Canada for psychological health and safety in the workplace for nearly 25 years. Liz has helped numerous organizations achieve better business outcomes by keeping people healthy, safe, and productive, known for expertise in health and safety and well-being, management systems, integrations, and interpersonal skills. Liz has empowered people with varied interests to achieve important goals. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much, Craig. And thank you, Minister, for that wonderful insight into the work that the Government of Ontario is doing. It is really wonderful to see mental health coming to the forefront and being in part of every conversation because people really, really are in need. And I am just going to share my screen. So let me know if you're seeing the right screen. You should be seeing my screen now. Hello? What happened? No, what happened? Where did
you look good, Liz. Everything's good.
Oh, okay. Okay, very good.
It's coming in there. You've got your main page working on the digital age. Working in the digital age.
Excellent. Yes, that's what we should be seeing right now.
The right
so
perfect.
It seems that this leads right in from some of the questions that I was seeing too coming up.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I did call it this because this was the topic that I was asked to talk about, and the fact that there's an increasing number of people who are struggling with addiction to electronic devices, mobile devices, and that there are some issues happening not only within construction but within many types of workplaces. So I am going to talk about this issue today, but in the broader context of what might be going on inside someone's mind when they're having chronic stress and mental health issues and this attachment to digital devices, and what we can do within the workplace to actually help people. So I'd like to just dive right in. I know we have quite a few slides here, and I'm going to also look forward to answering some of your questions. But just for, a little bit of introduction to start out with, introduction to the Mental Health Commission of Canada. For people who may not know, the Mental Health Commission is actually a catalyst for the mental health system in Canada. And what we're focusing on is providing change for attitudes and behaviors of Canadians around mental health issues. We're a not-for-profit organization. We were created in 2007 and funded by Health Canada. And as part of our mandate, the Mental Health Commission is committed to helping employers create and maintain healthy workplaces by providing the tools, information, and support that's needed to ensure that every person in Canada can go to work knowing that their organization recognizes the importance of psychological health and safety in the workplace. And the Mental Health Commission of Canada commissioned the development of the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, which was released in January of 2013. So we've just celebrated its 8th anniversary. And since then, we've been working to help organizations align their mental health strategies with the standard. And part of that is really helping people understand the stigma around mental health and what employers can actually do with respect to workplace interventions from a preventive point of view, not just when somebody is struggling, but how do we actually prevent these kinds of things from happening in the first place? So you see here our purpose, our mission, and our vision. And of course, our vision is mental health and wellness for all. Now, when we're talking about working in the digital age, you know, what we're seeing, especially working during the pandemic, is that a lot of people have increased screen time. I know for myself, for example, I've been working from home for 8 years. I have never been in front of the screen as much as I am now because all of our meetings are online. Everything is digital. Our kids are being homeschooled. We're connecting with people through Zoom and Teams and other platforms, even just to have conversations with our families and our loved ones and friends and people that are outside of work. And then when you add in all the work that's being done on the digital platform as well, it all adds up. And I've been hearing even about people, you know, not even being able to go to sleep at night without pulling out their cell phone and looking at it to check, you know, the one last thing, what's going on in you know, whether it's the pandemic or whether it's, you know, for a while it was the election in the US and what's going on in work and those last emails or whatever it is that's happening. People are having trouble putting that digital device down and actually getting the rest and the sleep and the rejuvenation that they need to feel refreshed and focused and on top of things for the next day. And we know that this is an issue, but when we have that access to digital devices during our work as well, that can also add to the amount of distraction that people are experiencing on the job. So whether they're looking at a digital device for something to do with their work, or whether they're looking at a digital device for something that is outside of their work, there's a lot more screen time happening and a lot more distraction, and people are not as focused. And this is leading to some serious incidents. Now, while there are many good uses for computers and mobile devices, there's also increased risks that come along with it, and we have to understand that. And a new study that was done in the US called Digital Distraction and Workplace Safety, it was issued by Screen Education, and they surveyed over 1,000 US employees in the spring of 2020. And what they found was that the average employee spends 2.5 hours each workday accessing digital content that is unrelated to their job. What they found was that it not only is it killing productivity, but distraction was causing 14% of respondents to say that at least one accident in their workplace had occurred due to an employee who was distracted by a smartphone. And these were having serious consequences. 59 of those accidents caused property damage, and 58 of them resulted in injury or death. And this is despite the fact that 47% of respondents were actually saying that their employer had a policy in place that restricted smartphone use at work. And Michael Mercier, who's president of Screen Education, had actually said that the accident rate is also higher on factory floors and in construction sites and in other industrial settings, at least 26% higher, with 3 in 5 of these cases ending in injury or death, because as we know, construction is already a dangerous work environment to begin with. Having that focus is absolutely critical, not only for your own health and safety, but for the safety of those around you. So if we're dealing with these situations where there's digital distraction and there's a possibility that people maybe are accessing things that are not work related, even if we do have policies in place, that may not be enough to actually protect people. And we have to understand, well, what is it that's actually happening? Why are people accessing these devices while they're working? And how can we actually support people so that they can have better focus at work and be on top of it? So that's what we're looking at. And, you know, when we look at the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, it does identify, you know, it follows the Plan, Do, Check, Act process that regular occupational health and safety management systems follow as well. And one of the things that they talk about in there is the need to identify hazards, eliminate hazards where you can, assess the risk, and then control the risk of hazards that cannot be eliminated. And they identified 13 plus 1, so 14, workplace factors that we know affects the mental health of workers. It affects it well if these factors are in place well within your organization, and it can deteriorate if these factors are not in place well. And one of those factors is protection of physical safety. And what the standard says is that protection of physical safety is present when a worker's psychological as well as physical safety is protected from hazards and risks related to the worker's environment, to the worker's physical environment. Now, I have been practicing occupational health and safety for 25 years, and I've been doing this well before the national standard came into place. And I can tell you that out of these many years of working with people, that what I tended to see was that when accidents were happening, usually somebody may have, it may have been because there was, a lack of a physical protection in place, or a lack of a procedure, or a lack of training or competence. But sometimes it was because there was a lack of focus. And when there's a lack of focus, we always had to get in there and find out, well, what's underlying that? This is not a matter of blaming the worker. We've had those discussions in the past about, trying to make sure that we understand what the root cause of the accident is, so that we can make sure that those type of things don't happen again. And this idea of protecting the psychological safety of a worker as well as their physical safety, it was always there. It was always there, and trying to understand, well, what is it that the worker is thinking about while they're focused on this very safety sensitive work that they're doing? What is distracting this worker? Is it something to do with the work? Is it something that's going on in their home life? Is it something that, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding? Do we need to clarify expectations? So we always had to look at what is underlying so that we can protect the psychological well-being of that worker so that they can be physically protected at work as well. So what does that really mean? When we look at how to reduce the risk of harm for workers on these sites, we have to make sure, of course, that we have our workplace policies in place, and we have to state what our position is on using electronic devices in the workplace. We have to understand what the responsibilities are, roles and responsibilities, and we also have to understand what action is going to be taken to enforce the rules, and what action is going to be taken if the rules are broken. But more so than that is that we have to understand why these things are important, and make sure that when we state that position and outline those responsibilities and actions, that what we're actually doing is setting up preventive measures that help to ensure that our workers are going to be supported in being successful in doing the work that we've asked them to do. So understanding, first of all, when we're talking about digital devices, for example, why are workers feeling the need to use these devices at work? We have to understand the impact of not using these devices or using these devices. We have to provide safe spaces, perhaps, for mobile use when it's needed, and we have to provide access to supportive resources to help people recover from mobile device addiction, just as the minister was just talking about. So, I'll give you an example. When a few years ago, I was doing a coaching between two individuals within a workplace, and the manager was very upset that the worker kept on using their digital device and kept saying, you're not supposed to be doing that during work hours. You're going on and you're doing it for stuff that has nothing to do with work. The worker was trying to explain that in the situation that this worker was in, there were so many obligations that this worker had family-wise. In order to be able to focus on the work, this worker needed to make sure that the things that were going on at home were okay, that the people that were at home were cared for, that certain things had been delivered, that certain things were happening, so that they could make sure, okay, that's done, now I can focus. So we had to really get in and understand, well, why are you enforcing this rule without talking to the worker to find out, is there some flexibility that needs to be brought into this so that you can support this worker in making sure that they're okay, so that they can then focus on the work. And once we were able to work with these two individuals and bring them to a point of understanding, here's what the worker needs, here's what the manager needs, here's how we can make this happen and make sure that there's safety and that the work is being done, that the work is not being compromised, that everybody's happy. It moved forward. The relationship improved, the morale in the department improved, the productivity improved, and there wasn't the need for enforcement. There wasn't the need for anything further. And this worker, I can tell you, was on the verge of going off on stress leave, had felt that they were being harassed by the manager. And it wasn't a situation of harassment. It was actually a situation of just a manager trying to enforce a policy where the worker actually needed to access their device. Now, that's something different than digital distraction that's related to addiction to a cell phone or addiction to Facebook or gaming or whatever. So for those kinds of things, we still have to understand, why is it that the worker is feeling the need to do this? And is there support that we can provide for them? And do we need to actually, provide a safe space at particular times? Okay, so you can do that on your lunch break, but you have to do it in a safe space. So helping to understand what's going on under the surface is so extremely important, because what we're trying to focus on here is actually mental health. It's really helping to make sure that people are in a state of well-being. This is the World Health Organization definition of mental health. And I'm not sure how many people have actually seen it, but usually when I ask, not too many people have seen this. And this is part of why there's such a stigma around mental health, is that when we tend to think of mental health, a lot of people think mental illness, and then they don't want to talk about mental health. But when you really think about what mental health is, it is a state of well-being. It's about realizing your own abilities. It's not about disability. It's about being able to cope with normal stresses of life. And it's about being able to work productively and fruitfully and be able to make a contribution to your community. So this is very important. And I'd like you to just really focus on this definition of mental health when you're thinking about mental health or having those kinds of discussions within your workplace. And what we're really trying to focus on is helping people to stay within that area of peak performance. We're not saying that all stress is bad, but what we do know is that there is an area of stress where, we need a certain amount of stress to be able to be motivated and get things done. When we are under stressed, that's when a lot of the distraction can happen, where we turn to other things to kind of get that escape. Or when we're overstressed and we're starting to feel, fuzzy-minded and exhausted and going toward that area of burnout. So whatever we can do to help to reduce the overall stress burden on a person, on a worker, we're going to help them stay within that area of peak performance. And so it's important to understand what chronic stress is and what happens within our brain. We have new evidence that shows that chronic stress actually predisposes the brain to mental illness. And just like the minister was mentioning, that prefrontal cortex, which shows here as the frontal lobe of the brain, this is where the executive functions are, those functions of thinking, speaking, reasoning, problem solving. And then when you look at the temporal lobe, you've got memories, hearing, behavior, and the ability to generate emotions. And when we are under stress for a long time, when we're under acute stress, those functions tend to shut down, and the limbic system, as the minister mentioned, takes over, and that fight or flight response happens. What happens with chronic stress is that we're chronically in that state of feeling that fight or flight, and it gets harder and harder for these functions to be able to, it gets harder to function. And so we have to make sure that when we have people working on a work site, that we're supporting their ability to keep their mental health in the best state possible. Because when we're under a chronic state of mental stress, what we can see inside the brain now and see that it starts to diminish. And you can see that the normal brain has lots of little branches here. The overly stressed brain for a long time doesn't. We know now that this can grow back, but it takes rest, rejuvenation, therapy in order to get that back. So some of the things that you can do is really be aware of what the indicators are of mental health and when somebody might be slipping towards mental illness. We are all on this continuum. And if you want to know more about this continuum, this is from our course, The Working Mind. And they teach how to identify what these indicators are, as well as what we can do to help somebody be able to move back into the green or to stay in the green. So we have this online. I've given you the link there. It's interactive, but nothing is recorded. So you can just go on and just kind of see where you are, or have your team do it. It can be used to open up discussion. Now, when we're looking at a pandemic, we know that the pandemic has had an impact on mental health too. There's a lot of extra work and, making sure that we're complying with the protocols. There's pressure to stay healthy. We have to make sure that our customers and clients are satisfied. There's been increased harassment and violence that we're seeing. And these things are all affecting people's mental health. And then we have the issue with access to resources. And I'm really glad to see that there is more access to virtual resources available now. So as we see these additional things happening, we can see that this needle may creep towards that area of burnout. So we really have to change this, and we have the power to change it. I just love Albert Einstein because he says we can't solve our problems with the same thinking that created them. So we have to think differently. I've given you a few slides here on some of the things that we can do to think differently. So when we're looking at policies, when we're looking at clear leadership and expectations, this is in the standards. So, yes, we have to prohibit mobile device use in situations where it can pose a danger, but identify some safe spaces for mobile use, communicate the policy, consult with workers about their needs, and clarify those expectations. Understand how to determine whether yourself or someone else does have an addiction. Are they using it most of the time? Are we unable to cut back on how much we're using it? Are we using the device as a solution to boredom? Are we using it to, spelling error there, feeling anxious or depressed when the device is out of our range? Or are we losing relationships because of it, because we're on the device all the time? If someone is having an addiction, then we need to be able to give them psychological and social support and put them in contact with those supports that may be available to help them. So if you have an employee assistance program, provide information and access to that assistance program. There's a lot of things that EAPs can help with, but also you may have to look at accommodation if a person does have a mental health condition or an addiction. So there's some tools out there that can help you with that. And these are a couple of the tools that are available. These are free tools that are online and available for you to download. And if you have questions about how to use those, then feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And of course, put people in touch with other mental health supports that are available within your community. So for example, Crisis Services Canada, Kids Help Phone, there's Connects, of course. And we also are providing mental health services free through Wellness Together Canada, which is a mental health and substance use website to support people across Canada and Canadians living abroad. and it's in both official languages, and it provides resources at no cost. So you can get immediate text support, you can get information and videos on common mental health issues, you can get mental wellness programs that you can do on your own with some coaching, and there's monitored communities of support, and there's individual phone, video, and text counseling available. And of course, if someone is in crisis, call 911. There's also numerous resources that are available on the Mental Health Commission website. These are just a couple of them. And I highlight these ones because if you are in a supervisory position, then there's some resources here that can actually help to guide the conversations for you, to help you to open up those conversations. So for example, how can I help my team? How can I help someone in mental distress? Okay, so I would encourage you to visit the Mental Health Commission website, and I'll be providing the links so that you'll be able to find the resources easily. Okay. So with that, I'd just like to say that, you know, and I've always believed this, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We'll spend a lot more money and a lot more time trying to fix the problems than if we just put more time and effort into prevention. Visit our website. We've got lots of resources there available for you. And with that, I'd just like to thank you for your time and attention today, and open it up for any questions that you might have.
Wow, Liz, that was fantastic. You know, I will say that I actually identify with some of the things you've said. I'll put my hand up. You know, some of those things fit me for sure. And, you know, I do it also for peace of mind. You know, I identify with that comment. You know, sometimes you just do it so you can put it behind you, knowing there's no issues. So it's interesting. You know, when I look at this, and I earlier we had some questions from John, that was one of his focus there, was, you know, we see this everywhere. Everybody's distracted, you know, at the family dinner table, you have to say, everybody phones down. We have to change our lifestyles. And I think, you know, do you have some simple practice tips to do it? You know, my own personal one is give a few minutes, put your phone down and have a conversation. Is much better than having a conversation with somebody online. Thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, one of the things that we have to remember is that people are very reactive, right? So if we're feeling like, okay, well, just put your phone down and pay attention to me, that may not always be the best way to come across. Mm-hmm. So maybe one of the better things to do might be to say, I'd really love to have a conversation with you. Can you finish maybe, you know, in a couple of minutes when you're done that, let's put the phones away and have a conversation. Certainly if you're in a work situation though, where you are in a dangerous situation, then put the phone away is an appropriate thing to say if someone's life could be in danger. So if we're dealing with family members though, and we're at home and we're just trying to get people's attention, you may want to have, you know, what we do in our home, for example, we don't allow the phones to be at the dinner table. We never have. Exactly. But that was drilled into me from my mother.
Unfortunately, I didn't have cell phones back then. But hey, one quick one, Liz. There we go. Thank you.
There.
Screen share. So we now got faces. Yeah, no questions. I think, you know, those are always important things. And I think everybody's going to find a balance, you know, because I will tell you that this device is, well, you can't see it. It's all like, wow, that's pretty good for Apple. Anyway, my phone is not showing up on my camera. But anyways, that device is part of my mental health. You know, the ability to check something, fact check something, do something, take action immediately, you know, send a quick note. As many, you know, like David will probably attest to, I just stream of consciousness, bam, done, it's over with. And so I use that to sometimes be effective and to reduce my stress. But at the same time, you got to recognize that it can cause stress. So I think there's a balance. How do we get people to open up a discussion about their mental health and maybe use of devices or another issue, you know, not just devices? How do we get people engaged in the workplace? And, you know, because it's a stigma, right? I mean, let's face it, that's one of the things going, hold on, there's nothing wrong with my mental health. I don't need to talk about this stuff. And, you know, it's getting an engagement. I think things like the Bell Let's Talk, you know, initiative is done fabulous. It brings it to awareness. It's one of the reasons why we're highlighting it today, is that, you know, you got to be able to talk about it. It's it's one of those stigmas. It's like taking an ethics course. What do you mean I don't have ethics? So I haven't taken an ethics course? Do I, how do I do that? So what do you think?
Yeah, it's a question that we get all the time. How do I open up that conversation? And basically, the best way to open it up is to ask people how they're feeling, but to do it in a genuine way. So, if we ask, well, how are you feeling? And the person says, oh, I'm fine. Well, that we all know that doesn't really say very much. So sometimes we may have to open the conversation by saying, you know what, I've noticed that you've been a little down lately, or I've noticed that this has been happening. I've noticed that you seem a little different than what you used to be. How long has this been going on? Would you like to talk about it? So inviting that person into the conversation by letting them see that you see them as a person, that you've noticed something is different about them. And it may just be, maybe there isn't something different. Maybe it's something wonderful and you just want to check in and you're just saying, hey, how are you feeling lately? Mental health is really a topic of conversation these days. Can we have a talk about that? How are you feeling? Sometimes it may be opening up about yourself first so that you show that vulnerability. And this is really important, especially for leaders, showing that they're willing to talk about mental health will help other people, especially within the workplace, feel that it's okay to talk about mental health and that it's actually not just okay, but that it's expected and that it's helpful.
Yep. I think everybody has their highs and lows. And I think, I mentioned it before in our pre-calls and stuff, but begin each day with a grateful heart. I like that behind you. And, I was thinking about this morning, I'm going, okay, Liz is on there. Think about grateful heart. And I thought about all the things that I do in my life, what could I be grateful for? And there was a big, long list. And, even taking negatives like COVID-19, I'm thankful that my wife has the vaccine. I'm thankful that, there's lots of people coming and we've got it going down, half full has versus half empty. And I think that helps a long way when we do these things.
Absolutely.
How do we get some mental health first aid training online? You've shown us a few resources there. Is there something more dialed in specific?
Yeah, we actually last year when the pandemic hit, we went to work trying to make sure that we could offer these courses on in a virtual format. Now, these courses are evidence-based, so the interpersonal interaction is extremely important. So the courses are offered virtually now. We have mental health first aid, which there's a bit of a pre-work component to it, and then 2 virtual sessions. And the Working Mind is also a virtual offering now as well. So you can go to Mental Health First Aid Canada for mental health first aid, and you can go to the Working Mind, and that will take you to the Working Mind courses. Feel free to contact me. I can put you in touch with the groups that do those courses. And yep, they're there and they're available. And we're working on getting more and more courses online, including the Inquiring Mind, which is, we've got one for youth and one for post-secondary as well.
And I like that, mental health first aid, because it says that something's not serious, but it does need attention. It sort of brings, like for somebody that deals with this kind of stuff all the time, we have first aids, medical aids, and then you have, major crisis issues. And, the ones that you still want to pay attention to are the small ones. And, sometimes finding out that you need that Band-Aid is a good thing. I see a couple of questions here online. One is fairly simple, I think. Any tips for college students dealing with added pressure when it comes to moving forward towards their goals? All these kids are in students right now in school still, and they had to deal with COVID. They've had to move online. They've lost a lot of people interaction, and I think even the ones today are completely stressed out about how to get out in the world.
Yeah. And my heart goes out. I mean, I can't even imagine going through that right now, but Mental Health Commission has done some work with post-secondary students in getting surveys and getting their input. I don't have all the details of that, but I can provide you with the results of that survey. But I mean, my own personal advice for that, my number one thing is take care of yourself. You know, when you look at those slides that I just showed in that, that impact of chronic stress, the best defense that we have against chronic stress is taking good care of ourselves. You know, making sure that you're getting the sleep, making sure that you eat properly and hydrate well. Those three things will help you to be able to keep your body stress down and keep your resilience up. And especially when you're, you know, going to school and perhaps working or looking for a job, one of the things that you want to do is try and keep that overall stress burden down. So whatever you can do to keep your well-being in good state, you know, get some movement in your day, get some exercise, get some fresh air, keep your well-being, your physical well-being in a good state so that you can also keep your emotional and mental well-being in a good state. You'll be able to think a lot clearer.
Okay, I got one more question. Was John, why is mental health as a result of EHS, electrical hypersensitivity, to EMFs, electromagnetic fields, from wireless devices completely being ignored? I'm not sure that's completely being ignored, seeing as we just talked about it, but again, has that something in the medical field that, you know, you could maybe comment on?
I cannot comment on that one. That's not part of the work that we do specifically. I'm not a medical professional. I'm an occupational health and safety professional. Yep. But one thing that I can say is that when we're looking at you know, digital devices and we're looking at the effect of using them, I think the question there specifically around digital addiction, or was it around the electric field?
Electric field, I think. More
around the electric field. I mean, I can remember looking at that back when I was learning occupational health and safety in university, and we were also looking at studies that had to deal with, you know, the effect of Bluetooth and the effect of that electronic field around the device. I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into reducing the amount of radiation that a person gets from it, but I can't really comment on that any further than that.
Okay, well, great. Well, I really enjoyed your talk, Liz. Thank you very much for coming. I think that our audience was engaged. I saw a bunch of good positive comments. You know, as far as we're going to try and wrap up in the next, you know, 5-10 minutes, a few things I want to talk about. You know, our Safety Week tagline is be present, be focused, be safe, which is all on fit for duty. And, you know, fit for duty comes in many ways. The League of Champions and OGCA are choosing to define it as, you know, making sure that we have our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, and our competency. So we're going to be talking about all four of those aspects of it, the states of fit for duty, over the next while. And, you know, David mentioned earlier, we've got it coming up in our first week of May, which is we're going to focus on mental health. And then there's 3 other weeks, and we're going to focus on each one of those other areas. And then throughout the year, we're going to have a number of initiatives to try and drive that across the province, because, you know, distracted is the biggest thing right now going for us, whether it be distracted through the COVID-19 or distracted for something else, or you're not focusing on your task at hand. It can certainly cause accidents, and it's just people not thinking clearly. So over the next little while, you're going to see a focus on that from the League of Champions and from the League of Champions. And I think, you know, coming up, we have 3 more seminars, as I said, coming out. We're working on our next topics, and we'll certainly be focusing on this aspect. Dan, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Thank you very much, Liz. That's great seeing you and hearing you again. I've heard you speak many times before, and it's always some great takeaways. What I found was, you know, taking care of physically and staying hydrated and eating good food are always great things. And also the sincerity and the empathy when you're asking people about how they are, you know, some great takeaways. And the last is the working mind. I think it's a great tool for that everybody should take a look at it and see where their state is, and also there's more work that can be done with that. So thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. I'd just like to close all out. Thank everybody for being here today. Some guests. We got some senior leaders that attended here today. We had Scott McKay from the director Threads of Life and Steps for Life. So great to see you here. It's a great organization that we support with the League of Champions. Giovanni, executive director for the OGCA. Thanks, Giovanni. Always great to have you here. Harold Reinders with CEO Maple Reinders. So it's great. Great we see the senior leadership here. We have Enzo Garitano with IHSA, and also Don Duval, my CEO with NORCAT. So thanks everybody for attending, and also you guys for all of the members that have attended today. We look forward to seeing you next month in our next webinar. And in closing, I'd like to tell everybody, test negative, stay positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.